Welcome to Progressive Short Takes. This is your host, Joe Firestone. What I'd like to talk about today is the issue of how we might fund a global campaign to meet the climate emergency. There was an article that recently appeared in the Common Dreams, and I'll share it with you. Title of it is, after all, it's our money. Global climate campaigners call for public banks to fund just recovery and green transition. And this is by Kenny Stansel, a staff writer at Climate Dreams. And this was published a little while ago on October 12th. So it's somewhat old. I thought the suggestion that we try to fund this through public banks, or that the Globe try to fund this through the public banks, was certainly, an interesting one. I see some problems, though. The first problem is that the public banks, the network, of public banks in the United States, is somewhat lacking, and undeveloped. The major public bank in the United States, by right now, is the Bank, of North Dakota. There's been some other activity in terms of founding a public bank in the LA area. I'm not sure where that is, at this point. In other words, how far along, it is. But the point is, we'd have to build a network of public banks, in order to fund this. Then second, there's the issue of decision making and who would be making the decisions about what is to get funded. If we turn things over to the public banks, then the people who run the public banks would be the people who would be in a position to do the funding. And of course, since it's public banks involved, the public banks would be lending money to projects to get them started and conduct those particular projects. And so the loans would have to be paid back. In other words, the process of financing would be primarily through loans, and the decisions would be made by bankers. Now, they would be public bankers. They might be trained in a different way. They might be concerned about the public purpose as opposed to the profitability of the organizations involved. But still, if they're like other bankers, then profit would be a really major concern. Do we want profit to be a major concern when it comes to funding new enterprises to help us transition from dirty energy to clean energy? Seems to me we might want to have public banks actually play a role in the transition. We might want to have them closely regulated to be helpful in the transition and not to consider profitability as a primary criterion for funding something. But it seems to me in some ways this is kind of an ad hoc sort of suggestion that doesn't really necessarily consider an overall framework as to how governments can fund certain things like a climate emergency, trying to cope with a climate emergency. One way for governments to do that, of course, is to start a network, of such banks, public banks. But another primary way to fund things is through fiscal policy. Why prefer public banks to fiscal policy? I don't see that. What I see myself is that we should probably use diverse means to fund the transition and to make the recovery just. But I think that the major force behind the financing should be the government, but should be fiscal policy. And to make that happen all over the world, we ought to have a situation where, as much as possible, the governments of the world, are monetarily sovereign governments that can use their own currencies and provide essentially grants as well as loans to new enterprises that are dedicated to transitioning to meet the climate emergency, and to do it in such a way as to promote the goals and objectives of such a transition, and especially the justice aspects. So, why suggest a network, of public banks completely apart from funding through fiscal policies? I don't know. I don't think that's a good idea. I would like to see a framework that is more comprehensive and has a role not just for public banks, but as well for fiscal policy and for central banks, as well. So that's all for this the Progressive Short Takes. And thank you for coming. I'll be back shortly with another Progressive Short Take. Thank you very much.